Hi, this is Tish Aiken, and I'm here to discuss Venus in retrograde. I want to give a shout out to my friend Paula, who's a very feisty but helpful Aries, and felt that it should be a little more lively. So let's see if I help to do that. But anyway, I'm talking about Venus in retrograde, and it's really interesting because we finally cleared the Mars story, and we've had a summer complete with 7 planets retrograde, 2 of which are personal, and I'm not going to be a broken record because I've been discussing this a lot, as have all astrologers basically that are out there, and I'm sure you've heard it over and over. But I think the big deal was the Mars story, because Mars was out of bounds since March of this year. It was retrograde from June 26th until August 27th. It made very challenging aspects with squares to Uranus. There were 3 squares on and off since May 15th, which can be very challenging, very disruptive, can be brilliant and innovative, but certainly brings up the fire, as we've seen. And Mars is also traveling with the South Node, which brings up past karma, can bring up shadow issues around anger and violence and all the things that we've also seen play out. And Mars met up with the South Node a third and final time this week. So we're done with that story, and now we're going to the feminine. We're going to Venus in retrograde, and it's interesting because Mars is still in its shadow. It's clear. It's no longer retrograde, but it's going to clear its shadow on October 10th, and Venus is now in its shadow because it reached the degree at which it's going to station direct. So it entered its shadow on September 3rd of this year, when it entered 25 degrees of Libra, and it's going to retrograde on October 5th. It's now in Scorpio, but it's going back to Scorpio and Libra. So the theme this fall is really very much around relationships, because I feel that Scorpio and Libra are both relationship signs. Scorpio is about merging on a deep level. It's about sharing your deepest secrets. It's about removing the blocks of intimacy. It's about merging financially. It rules joint assets. It rules blocks and wounds, but it also rules partnering on the deepest level possible when it's right, you know? And it is death and rebirth. That's what Scorpio represents figuratively and literally. And Venus in Libra is in its domicile. I should say that Venus in Scorpio is in its detriment. It's not an easy placement. It can be very painful, very seductive. Scorpio is an incredibly seductive sign, but it also can be kind of a dark and stormy placement of Venus. So Venus is going to retrograde initially at 10 degrees of Scorpio on October 5th. And it's we're getting out of the Mars story, because Mars is going to clear its shadow, meaning the degree at which it initially stationed retrograde, which was 9 degrees of Aquarius, and Mars is going to clear that shadow on October 10th. So we're getting out of the Mars story and we're getting into the Venus story, which is embracing the feminine. It's embracing things of value. It's embracing beauty and love, but as any retrograde does, it's asking you to turn inwards and reflect. And so it's a wonderful time for reviewing what you really want, what you love, what you desire, but also doing a lot of inner work, especially with Venus and Scorpio. And I think what's interesting about this is that Jupiter, which is the planet of abundance and expansion and higher learning, is in Scorpio until November 8th of this year. And then it's going to enter its home sign of Sagittarius. So we've got Jupiter bringing light and levity to a very dark and intense sign, although a very transformative sign, Scorpio. So Venus in retrograde is not an easy time, because it can bring up a lot of distant memories. We don't have as many planets retrograde as we did this summer. We no longer have all these eclipses, and we don't have Mars acting up. So that makes it easier, but in the same time, Venus in retrograde challenges relationships, and so you might find things surface in partnerships. It is not necessarily the best time. It isn't the best time to start a new relationship or a new financial venture. Although you might find sometimes, and we can't always control things. Life is about, how we deal with what happens to us. So you could meet somebody during this time that's very karmic and fated, and that I've seen happen, and that can definitely happen. But I would really recommend it more of a time of reflecting on how you want to obtain what you love. If there are issues around unhealed partnerships or things you've done in the past or issues that you're reconciling, this is really a fantastic time to do so. And you know, Venus is also deferring back to Saturn, both in Libra and in Scorpio, because it really was only a few years ago. And I think the fact that Jupiter is now in Scorpio really also helps to bring some levity in finishing up that story when Saturn was in Scorpio, because that's an intense time. That was an intense time of dealing with wounds and blocks. And so this round, Venus is retrograding at 10 degrees of Scorpio on October 5th. It's going to re-enter Libra on October 30th, and then it's going to station direct on November 16th at 25 degrees of Libra. So again, this is a time of revisiting many issues. On October 15th, there's going to be a conjunction of Mercury and Venus, and that might be a good time to write down or to think about what you want to manifest, what your desires are, really do deep thinking on that. And then October 26th, there's going to be a conjunction of Venus and the Sun in Scorpio right before it re-enters the sign of Libra. Now Venus in Libra is in its domicile because Venus enters the sign of Libra, and it's you know, it's happy there. It's about partnering, it's about diplomacy, it's about justice. And when I mentioned that both Venus in Scorpio and Venus in Libra defers back to the Saturn story, I must mention that Saturn was at these degrees. It was at 25 degrees of Libra in November of 2011, and you look at the trajectory of November of 2011 until November of 2011 through October of 2013. That Venus will cross over the degrees at which Saturn was at that time. So again, you can restructure this story if they're unhealed issues for you, or if you just want to build from what you've been working on this past few years. And the other thing too is we're completing an 8-year cycle, because Venus has a synodic cycle of 8 years. So Venus was retrograde. So we're deferring back to this 8-year cycle that began in October of 2010, when Venus initially stationed retrograde on October 8th of 2010 at 13 degrees of Scorpio, and then it's stationed direct on October 6th, I believe. I can't remember exactly, but at 27 degrees of Libra. So we're really completing this 8-year cycle, as well as deferring back to Saturn and Scorpio. And so I know a lot of people are thinking this is going to be a really dark time, because Venus is really intense and heavy in Scorpio, and it is, you know, not easy. And because Saturn was just in Scorpio a few years ago, which was intense. I mean, Saturn was in Libra as well right before that, but Saturn's exalted in Libra. So a lot of people got married during that time, and foreign partnerships. Yes, Libras did go through changes and shifts, but Saturn again is exalted and is a good placement in Libra. In Scorpio, it's really intense, and I think in the same way, Venus in Scorpio is in its detriment, and Venus rules the sign of Libra. So it's maybe, I would look at it really as healing these wounds that may be going back to 8 years, if not to when Saturn was in Libra and Scorpio. And really, you know, if something's not working, really evaluate if it's for you or not. You may not want to make that decision with Venus in retrograde, but I think that, you know, we're getting ready for Jupiter entering Sagittarius, which is going to give us a lot of hope and optimism, and I'm going to talk more about that. I'm definitely going to be talking a lot more about Venus in retrograde this fall, because Venus is going to be in this place, the sector of your chart, wherever that may be, for the next few months, because it's going to be clearing this degree until December 18th, you know, and it's going to be in Scorpio for a long time. It's going to be hitting this area for a long time. So let's just see how to work with it. And I think it's releasing the story of the summer, and also really using this fall to let go of anything you may be holding on, whether it's a distant memory or it's a current relationship. If there are grievances in any area, try to get some closure with this, because you're in a sign that can be very transformative and healing if used properly. So I wish you a lot of luck. I'm glad to see Mars gone. I'm a Scorpio, so it's Venus is retrograding in my sign, so I know it's going to be intense, but I welcome it, because I think you sometimes need to face the darkness to get to the light. So I wish you a lot of luck. And thank you, Paula. Bye-bye.